Alright, so today we're doing a build and I am using a new camera. So you guys are going to have to bear with the footage till I get everything tweaked. But yes, we are building the MST FXX-D and this is the S series. So it's a plastic version of their VIP one that was already out. Camera's a little slow to focus, but when it does, it's very clear. And this is another part of the pre-order, so I got a ball diff, which I won't be installing now. I'm going to run the spool, the rims, all our parts, pull everything out here, and get cracking on the build. Alright, so first things first, the chassis. Get everything out here, all bits and pieces. Alright. So we're supposed to throw these foam pads on here, which I'm assuming will help give a little bit of traction to the battery. Next, it's going to be the hinge pin retainers. Make sure to note the direction. There's a plus 5 degrees and minus 5 degrees. So one's for the front and one's for the rear. Alright, so 2 screws. We'll do that there. Same for the front. And next will be the electronics tray. So another 2 screws. And these are the countersunk ones, so you have nothing hanging outside the chassis, or lower than the chassis, should I say. Battery retainers. Alright, get those done. Another one of those. And now we're on to the lower A-arm. Alright, the bit's out. And this is a different setup than I'm accustomed to, so it's a 2-piece A-arm. So you have the one part where the hinge is, and you throw a screw through that, and then a ball end just screws at the end of the screw. Which gives you your complete A-arm, but it's different. I'm assuming it's for adjustability. Alright, so now both sides are done. Just tighten everything up here. I'm going to throw on the ball so we can snap the shocks on a little bit later. And we got the hinge pin and 2 plastic grommets. Just throw that into the retainer and finish it up with the front. And now we're on to the steering assembly. All the bits out. So first thing, screw in the steering posts. That's what the assembly is going to slide on. Get our bearings, screw into the bell crank, and into our long tie rod piece. Add our ball ends. That's what's going to connect everything up to the C-hubs later, or the steering knuckles, should I say. So once they're on the steering posts, 2 screws, nice and snug, and they slide great because they're on bearings. Snap on the steering links, and now onto the upper arm. So this as well is a 2-piece. We have the hinge portion of it, and then the ball end just screws at the end. Alright, and there we have another retainer. The grub screws in there. And just repeat for the other side. Alright, so I'll just snap in the ball. And we're ready to move on. Now we're on the motor mount assembly, and that's going to help us tie everything in. So I'll throw in the electronics later, so for now I'm just going to stab that in there. 4 screws underneath is going to hold that together. Have the hinge pins for the upper control arms. Alright, once that's in, the little screw at the end is going to hold that from sliding out. And same for the other side. Alright, now the gear assembly. So we have 2 uprights, bunch of bearings, beveled gears, and what should be a spur, but it's quite small. Never done a shaft driven car like this before. Rear wheel drive anyways. Alright, so all the little bits are out. Get our bearings into the uprights. More or less the transmission. I don't know if it's uprights is the proper term. Alright, so get the bearings in. Let's slide that one shaft through. You have a plastic retainer, another bearing. Alright, so that last shaft is going to go through the top portion of the retainer. Once that's in there, 4 screws are going to hold that whole transmission piece together. And on that opposite side is what the spur looks like, a little tiny thing. So we have 2 recessed portions into the chassis. Let's sit that in there, 2 screws to lock it up. Now onto the rear, getting into the more complicated stuff than the drive shafts and whatnot. So A-arm, you got our hinge pin, plastic retainer, screw on the ball for the shocks. Same on the opposite side. Stab those in place. Oh, yeah, I have to flip those around. There you go, a little bit smoother. So hinge pin retainer, 2 screws at the bottom, locks you in. Don't have to worry about those falling out anymore. Now for the rear, we're going to go with a solid spool. So this is built pretty much like a ball diff. You have the nut that goes in the axle piece, screw right across. You just don't have any of the balls. Just going to lock it down tight. Probably install the ball diff later, but for now I wanted to try it with the solid spool. Right, put your bearings in, shims. Now onto the drive shaft assembly. So we have drive shaft retainer, bearing. Once that's in, at the opposite end you have a drive pin and a grub screw, so it gives it turns into dog bone at the end. And now we have the rear diff assembly. Throw in that drive shaft we built earlier, and then the bevel gear. And onto the spool. Make sure your bearings are sitting properly, and just finish off the back with 4 screws. Now I'm going to get the ball ends in there so we can snap in the upper control arms. So 4 screws, just going to get that done. Rear diffs there. We're almost home free. So here we have the chassis braces. I'm going to start with the one side. All you have to do first off is try to line up that drive shaft retainer, and the rest of the stuff you can just screw on afterwards. Fiddling with it off screen there, had a hard time. Alright, so now we got it in. These all fall off as I'm putting it on. Like I said, it's not a big deal. Get this all nice and snug, and everything else can just be screwed on after. The cross member piece, that was a gyro plate. We'll leave that aside for now. There we go. Last cross member piece, and now the opposite side of that rail. Screw on each side, and then we'll finish that up off camera. Alright, on now to the hubs. and the caliper in this setup. Right. Load the bearings, get those discs off. So here we're just going to use a blank drive shaft because it's a two-wheel drive car. So throw that in, the bearings, and now for the disc. Alright, that's nice and smooth. Next we're going to do the bracket for the pad. Or sorry, the caliper, should I say. Throw the whole caliper back on there. One screw holds that in place. And now we're just going to mount that up. So one screw underneath. And snap on the steering link to hold it in place. And one screw up top in the upper control arm. Alright. So both sides are done. We're good to go. Now to move on to the rear. So what we're going to be building here is the drive shaft assembly. So we're going to have the hub, we're going to have the axle and the swing shaft. I'm going to drop a small drive pin in there. And once that's pushed through the hub, it'll hold everything in place, so there's no set screw to throw on there. And that's complete. I'll throw the ball in on top so we can snap on the control arm. The pin goes through the lower A arm and it's all in. So now we're going to move our way over to the shock towers. Alright, so this would probably work better if I had the right tower. That's the other one that belongs up there. Alright. So now I'm going to pull in, or throw in the ball ends. Snap our shocks into that. And now we have the shock tower for the rear. Same thing here. I'm going to throw in the ball ends for this. There's going to be a lot of tuning as I go, but I just stuck to what they had in the manual, so the preset configuration, I guess you'd say. Alright, now on to the shocks. These are plastic bodies, but they look very nice. And so far, MST hasn't let me down, so I'm assuming what I see here is going to follow suit. We can get all our little bits and parts out. And that is every little bit. It's quite a stuff here. So here we have the shock shaft. We have E-clip that put the plunger on, and another E-clip up top. Throw that through the shock body. Add two spacers, or two rubber washers, should I say, and then the cap screws underneath. It's going to keep the shock from leaking at the bottom. And here for the top, just going to throw in our oil and work the plunger up and down, get all the air pockets out. Put on our diaphragm, then we have an O-ring, and then the cap. And that's what's going to keep these guys from being leaky shocks. Let's hope anyways. Alright, so thread that in properly here. Snap on the shocks. One screw behind it to hold it up top, keep them from popping out. Very smooth. I'm happy with it so far. And now for the foam bumper. So we have the one lower bracket, three screws in that, holds it in place. And now we have the body post, throw that through the foam bumper. Two more screws holds that assembly together. And then we have another bracket for the top, which stiffens everything up. So two more screws there. Alright, so now the body post for the rear. And she's done. Little tidbits, easy stuff. Throw on some tires. Finish that up off camera here. And we have the final product, the MST FXX-D. And this is the S series, so it's all plastic. Nice and smooth, ball bearings all the way around. Plastic is nice. It's plastic as always, but again, the quality's there. A close up here if we can get this new camera to focus on the discs and calipers. There we go. So very nice. Gotta go look at the side profile. Get up close here. Throw in our motor a little bit later. That's the next video that's coming. Servo mounting portion there. And gyro's going to go up top on the plate. But this is it. So guys, thanks for watching. Please thumbs up and subscribe.